Hello, everybody. Welcome again to another edition of the GD Report. I am D.
And I'm Gene. Hello, everybody.
And how's everybody doing? We've got a great show tonight. Lots of stuff happening. First of all, G-Man, let me wish you happy President's Day.
Yes. Same to you there, Mr. D.
We are celebrating the fact that we actually have a president now.
Right.
All our Republican and right-wing listeners will be mad at me for saying that, but it's that federal holiday we all celebrate. Some of us do. Depends on if your employer gets those days off. But in any case, originally was designed to celebrate Washington's birthday and Lincoln's, but it kind of incorporated all presidents now. So happy President's Day to everybody. Speaking of presidents, let's talk about everyone's former most immediate past president. The second impeachment trial of former President Donald J. Trump wrapped up this weekend. Why don't you give us a quick recap of what happened?
Well, as we were talking off air, I'm going to be a little miffed at how things went. So basically, the Democrats presented their case. They showed compelling video that the Republicans then claimed was doctored. The Democrats said it wasn't. I'm inclined to believe that it wasn't. It's pretty horrific. They brought in testimony about how people feared for their lives. The weird thing was they didn't bring in any witnesses, despite clamoring during the first impeachment that there should be witnesses, that it was a trial atmosphere, and there should be witnesses. At the very end, they did vote to have witnesses. It passed, and then they agreed that they wouldn't have a witness, that they would just read a statement. And then when it was all said and done, it ended up just like anybody who follows this stuff knew it was going to end up. About 8, I think, Republicans, including one from Louisiana that was kind of shocking, voted with the Democrats, but they were about 10 short from actually voting to, I guess, remove Mr. Trump from office, and then having a separate vote to ensure that he would never be able to run for federal office again. So where we are is where we started. Mr. Trump is still making noise like he's going to run in 2024. His base is still ticked at the Democrats for wasting public time. And that's kind of where we are.
Okay, I'll make a couple of points real quick. Number one, based on the rules that were agreed to in the trial by both sides, they weren't allowed to introduce any witnesses until when they requested it.
Yeah.
So that was the time to request witnesses. Once they requested witnesses, took the vote, I agree with you. I don't think they should have taken the vote if they didn't have intention of calling her, particularly the one congresswoman. But at that point, the Trump side had threatened to call 100 witnesses. I would like to have seen them call their bluff on that, just because I don't think those lawyers could have named 2 witnesses that they wanted to call, just because that was the most inept legal team that I think I've seen in a long time since.
Well, let's back up for a second.
Well, wait a second. Let me finish my points here.
Okay.
Let me finish my point. So during the break, when they were trying to figure out the motion on calling witnesses, Chris Coons, a senator from Delaware, came to them and told them that based on conversations with Mitch McConnell, and Mitch McConnell had released a statement that morning too, saying he was going to vote for acquittal, that there weren't going to be enough votes no matter. I mean, if they got Trump to come testify himself and he said, I did it, I do it again, I wanted, blood in the halls of the Capitol, they still weren't going to vote for it. So while it may appear like a waste of time, it definitely was. It was a case for people to be on the right side of history. It's a case for people to take a stand and say, we're not going to accept this kind of behavior, even if the Senate's not going to follow up, if the Republican Party doesn't have a conscience. And then the third point I'll make about this is I almost laughed when you said it, but I know you're talking about what the Republican side says, But I laugh out loud when I hear the Republican side say, let's get back to the business of legislating. The
Right.
people who have set on legislation for the last 4, or actually probably longer, probably more like the last 8 years, haven't allowed regular order to come back into session, haven't allowed bills to be voted on, that bills pass in the House from both sides, by the way. I sound like Trump when I say that.
Right.
But from both sides, even when the Republicans would pass certain bills, they would sit on Mitch McConnell's desk. And so pretty disingenuous for them to say, let's get back to the business of legislating, when I'm sure they're going to do everything they can to block the COVID relief bill we'll talk about in a little bit.
Right. Well, what I was going to say is the woman, the congresswoman, and she's a member of the House. I can't remember her name.
Yeah.
She basically testified, and they read this. She gave a statement to a reporter, I guess, that basically recounted a conversation she had with Kevin McCarthy, where Kevin McCarthy talked to President Trump, and during the riot, during the insurrection, and asked him to have his people stand down. And Trump's response was, I guess these people care more about the election than you do.
Right.
My thought is, so that's hearsay right there. Why not, if you're going to vote, like you said, if you're going to vote to have witnesses, which they did, and they won the vote, they got enough Republicans to vote with them. Of course, I think they only needed 50, right? It was a simple majority.
Right, it was a majority vote, yeah.
They got several Republicans to vote with them. You know, once you win the vote, why don't you call Kevin McCarthy? Why don't you call him to the stand and say, hey, tell us about that phone call that you had with Mr. Trump. What did he say?
Well, I think the fear on that, honestly, was that it would drag the trial out.
Who cares?
Well, I'll tell you who cares. Joe Biden cares if he can't get a vote on his agenda.
Well,
the Senate, the Constitution says that when a Senate trial, impeachment trial, is in session, that no other business should take place. So they'd have to change the rules of the Senate and be able to get that through. I don't. Do you remember a guy named Don McGahn?
Yeah, he was the White House counsel for Trump.
Yeah, he was subpoenaed, not just asked to testify. He was subpoenaed to testify in the House impeachment,
and he didn't.
Guess what? That's still in court today.
Right.
That's still being litigated today.
Well,
so I get your point, but at some point you got to go. We're not going to have the votes. Let's get on.
Right. You know, you might be right. It just seems.
No, I mean, I totally get what you're saying about it, but it's just, I mean, I don't think there's enough conscience or backbone in the Republican Party. Trump has projected for the last 5-6 years about himself, and he's been right. As much as I despise the man, I'll say he's been right on almost everything he said, because he said I could kill somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose any support. And by supporting that insurrection, calling those people to DC, telling them to stand back and stand by, and then not calling them off, we've had 3 Capitol Police officers die. We've had, I think, 5 other people die that died in the actual insurrection. So, and to your point, not going to face any jail time yet for it, supposedly. Mitch McConnell gave his big turtle tears speech afterwards about how he couldn't vote for it because it was unconstitutional to impeach a private citizen, because the trial was held after Trump was no longer president. Whenever Mitch McConnell blocked the trial from taking place, that thing started on Tuesday and ended on Saturday.
Right.
Okay. They could have very easily, when the articles of impeachment were passed, it was passed on like a Monday. They could have started the trial on Tuesday and had it done before the inauguration if Mitch McConnell had called the Senate back into session, but he said he wouldn't do it.
Right.
And so he's trying to save face now with corporate donors, because there's a lot of pressure on on people who supported the insurrection not to get any corporate dollars. Now, we'll see if a year from now that still lasts and people are still, corporations are still vocal about doing that. But that whole speech from Mitch McConnell was about trying to save corporate dollars.
Let me ask you something. I mean, you follow this stuff pretty close, right? So which do you think was more serious, Watergate or Trump's inciting the insurrection?
I think the insurrection.
Right.
And I'm not just saying that because I'm closer to it. I mean, it's easy sometimes, like you and I both are sports fans. It's easy to fall in love with the athletes you actually saw, and you say, "Oh wow," you say, Hank Aaron, he doesn't hold up to today's home run hitters. The Albert Pujols or the Mark McGuires or people like that are such better hitters and such more complete players. Whenever Hank Aaron wasn't necessarily your contemporary, and so it's easy to kind of reflect back on history that way. That's not the way this is. And by the way, Hank Aaron was the best.
Right.
So I'll just say that. Rest in peace. Just passed away a few weeks ago.
Well,
But I'm not just saying that because I'm so close to it. We have never had a sitting president call on people to rebel against their government, basically, for all intents and purposes, threaten a sitting vice president, his own vice president, with death, threaten the Speaker of the House, and then do nothing about it. I mean, think about this. One of the most painful things, and I think I said this on a podcast a while back, one of the most painful things for me was, as much as you studied it and as much as I studied the Civil War, as ugly a time as that was for our country, not once was a Confederate flag paraded through the capital of our country.
Yep.
Yet during this insurrection, there were Confederate flags everywhere. The American flag was taken down and Trump 2020 flags were raised.
Yep.
And so to me, this, and I think people are just kind of ignoring it. And especially they want to go into, well, I'm a Republican, so I'm just going to ignore it. And that's kind of how a lot of the senators were. They weren't paying attention. The Republicans, they had no intention from the minute that trial started. You could have shown them clear evidence, which I think the House managers did, but they could have had even more evidence,
right,
and they still would have voted no, because that's how tribal we are now. But to me, to threaten our own government, and I mean, when you see that video of Secret Service taking Mike Pence and his family out, that's powerful. When you see the video of Mitt Romney going the wrong way down the hall and the Secret Service officer telling him to turn around because he was going towards the insurrectionists, and you see the Capitol police officers making a human shield way down that into that one hallway in order to block the senators running to get away.
Right.
I mean, it's a sad day for our country that more people aren't upset about that.
Right. Well, I think there are people upset. I'm pretty upset. They just don't know what to do about it, which, in the, off air, we were talking about this, and I told you, I'm ticked at the Democrats. I think Watergate was a much lesser offense, and it cost the president his job. And it cost him his job because the Democrats were tenacious enough and kept the hearings going that eventually the public came to their side, and Barry Goldwater made the trip to the White House to say, Mr. President, we don't have the votes to keep you. And
that's what I was going to say. The one thing I'll disagree with you on about that is the reason that happened was because the Republicans were tenacious, not because the Democrats were. You had a Republican Party that actually had a conscience. You had people like Larry Hogan's dad, who I think that cost him re-election. He was the first member of House of Representatives to come out Republican, to come out against Nixon.
Right.
And you had people like Barry Goldwater who were willing to go say, it's over. There's nobody in the Republican Party that was willing to say to Donald Trump it was over. They might bloviate, and Mitch McConnell might say his little speeches and say the American people have spoken after the Electoral College was certified, but he didn't talk to Trump after that.
Right.
That's the problem, I think, in the passive aggressive society we have now. his own people that wouldn't stand up to him. So I can understand having some angst about it and having some angst towards the Democrats, but I blame the Republicans more than I do the Democrats.
Right.
Because 2/3 vote, I mean, unless you're Republicans in Oklahoma or Utah, you're not going to get a 2/3 vote through your legislature unless the other party participates.
Right.
And so I think it's a sad day for the country. It's a sad day for the Republican Party. I think I did hear today they are going to have a 9/11 style commission where they're going to investigate it.
Right.
And but you already see the Republicans trying to rewrite the history of it.
Yeah. Well,
Jim Jordan in the House is saying that he feels like it's Nancy Pelosi's fault that it happened. Ron Johnson, the senator from Wisconsin, saying he doesn't really understand why people call it an armed insurrection. He didn't really see weapons. And so you're starting to see them already start to rewrite the history.
Yeah. Well, and I know I was listening to Fox. Can't remember the guy's name. The guy, former movie reviewer, who I really can't stand, but it was the only radio station I could pick up driving back from North Carolina. And they were basically saying that Trump had nothing to do with this. That these people on their own planned it. They planned it weeks ahead of time. They used Parler and Facebook, these Facebook groups to basically send coded messages between themselves to be able to pull it off. And all that may be true, but none of that would have happened if we didn't have a president who embraced violence. I mean, one of the things that his attorneys in the impeachment trial said was, which almost, stopped the car and puked, was that he was the most peace-loving president we've ever had. This is a guy who at his campaign rallies, when they would escort protesters out, he would tell his supporters, "Somebody go outside and beat the hell out of that guy, and I'll pay your attorney bill." Which anybody,
I wouldn't count on him paying any
other bills. Why would he pay their attorney bill? So, but yeah.
Hey, I got a question for you on that. You're provoking a lot of questions tonight.
Yeah.
So I got a question for you about him not being responsible.
Yeah.
So if he wasn't responsible for the rally or for the riot and the insurrection, we know he was responsible for the rally. But the theory that you just laid out, that's the right-wing talking point, is that he just had a rally to tell his followers thank you, and that they should peacefully call on Mike Pence to circumvent the Constitution and do what he didn't have the power to do, which is overturn the election and give it to Trump. So that's kind of their theory, right? Donald Trump had nothing to do with marching on the Capitol or any of the riot. Let me ask you this. If he had nothing to do with this and armed insurrectionists were storming the Capitol, beating Capitol police officers, and people were getting hurt, why was there no evacuation of the president from the White House? Wouldn't they evacuate him to somewhere safe if that was going on in D.C.?
You would think so.
Especially if their theory where some of them try to say it was Antifa.
Right.
Wouldn't they take him to a safe, undisclosed location at that point?
Or at least take him to the bunker in the White House.
Yeah, he wouldn't be just sitting in the Oval just watching TV, would he?
No.
Unless he knew what was happening and he was just watching it like watching a football game or something.
Yeah.
So I think more is going to come out. I think the longer time goes, the worse that vote is going to look for those 43 senators that voted against removal from office. Right. I think it's gonna be one of those votes that haunts a lot of them the rest of their lives. You already seeing the ones who voted to remove him being censured by their parties, but the only one up for re-election in 2022 is Lisa Murkowski. So
right, which, as we talked off air, she doesn't really care. I mean, before all this occurred, she lost the Republican primary, and so what did she do? She ran that race as an independent and won.
And not just as an independent either. Let me say that she won it on a write-in ballot.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
pretty tough to get people motivated to go to the polls anyway, but then to remember your name, because the way they challenge ballots, they're going to challenge any misspelling of Murkowski.
Yeah. Well,
So,
so she's a force to be reckoned with in Alaska. I mean, I don't, Trump says he's going to primary her, and to that I say, good luck, buddy, because
well, yeah, I think there's only one person who could be a potential really threat, which is Sarah Palin, just because of name recognition and the amount of money she'd be able to raise around the country. But
right.
Murkowski has called Palin out before and said, bring it on, a couple times.
Yeah, well, there's a big difference between Murkowski and Palin. Murkowski is smart, and she's not a dimwit. I mean,
well, I'll just remind you, there was a big difference between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got a point. So,
all right, so we shall see how this goes. So this leads us kind of to a little bit of the aftermath. Donald Trump's trying to do a touchdown dance now, and he's saying that the MAGA movement is just getting started. It's nowhere close to over. And then Trump, I don't even know if sycophant is a strong enough word for Lindsey Graham. Brown noser,
suck up.
Eddie Haskell, suck up. I don't really know there's a term that encapsulated. I saw a thing on the internet the other day that said around Valentine's Day that if you're looking for love, you should try to find someone that looks at you the way Lindsey Graham looks at Donald Trump. Sure. If you really wanted to find true devotion. Right. But Lindsey Graham's out there saying that Trump plus is the way that the Republican Party is going to win in 2022. Donald Trump needs to keep the MAGA movement going. He needs to unify the party. And if they do that, they're going to have great success. They're going to win back the House. They're going to win back the Senate. And he says when they do, one of the first things they're going to do is they're going to impeach Vice President Kamala Harris because of some of the stuff she said encouraging riots, supposedly, which she did not say the things he said she did back in the summer around Black Lives Matter. And they're going to impeach her. So that's one of the first things they're going to do. So if the right wing is supposedly sick of impeachments, then they'll just have something teed up right there for them.
Well, they're not sick of impeachments. They're sick of impeachments with their guys as the target. That's what they're sick of. So as we've seen before, the rules don't really apply to them like they do to everybody else. So they'd be happy to impeach Biden or Harris or anybody else or Nancy Pelosi, anybody they think they could impeach and get rid of if they had the votes. They'd certainly do it. And,
well, my question is on the things he's talking about impeaching her for, which again, are fabrication by Mr. Graham. Even if they were true, they occurred before she was vice president.
Right.
So they did not occur when she was vice president. And the thing about Trump, they kept trying to say was, we've never impeached a private citizen. Again, he was impeached when he was president for things he did while he was president. The only reason we didn't have a trial while he was president was because Mitch McConnell blocked it. And then once he blocked it, turned around and said, I can't vote for this. It's unconstitutional to impeach, to have a trial after somebody's out of office. So they can save me the tears on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there.
Okay, speaking of Vice President Biden, former Vice President and now President Biden, I should say, getting all my pronouns confused and titles confused, but President Biden's got the COVID relief bill now, and a lot of people feel like that's part of why what happened on Saturday went down, was because Democrats are ready to just move on and say, let's get the COVID relief bill passed. Looks like they're going to be passing it via reconciliation, which would only require 51 votes as opposed to the 60 vote majority that we needed to break the filibuster. Right. Republicans are crying foul about that. We can't believe you would jam something through without bipartisan support. You said you wanted unity. And so just any thoughts about that as far as the call for unity on this bill?
Yeah, I would look at every Republican that said that in the face and tell them, I got 2 words for you. You want to know what those 2 words are? Merrick Garland.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I would say,
who still, by the way, hasn't been confirmed as Attorney General because Lindsey Graham used his ability to still chair that committee to block the hearing.
yeah, that's exactly
Yeah,
what I would say to him. You know what? You don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to talking about, bipartisanship and all that. You got none. So you know what? We're taking a page out of your playbook, and we're doing what we want to do for a change. If you don't like it, win some elections. So as you said,
I would say exactly, and I would say if you don't like it, vote against money for local fire departments and local police departments, which are included in this bill.
Right.
Vote against unemployment insurance. Vote against the $1,400 check to go with the $600 check to make the $2,000. Vote against it.
Yeah.
Vote against it if you're so against it. But why negotiate with them? They're not negotiating in good faith.
Yeah, I would.
They're not negotiating in good faith at all. And I would slam it through. I'd get a big win, and then I'd tour the country on it. I mean, they've already given plenty of campaign votes. The fact that they side with Marjorie Taylor Greene, the fact that they side with Donald Trump and the insurrection, and then now they're going to vote against support for people. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think they stick to their agenda. They make their case with the American people, however they want to do that, via Twitter or Facebook or just old style on Meet the Press. And then they come out in 2 years when they're running, they're like, hey, are you better off now than you were 2 years ago? Absolutely you are. And the reason for that is because Joe Biden and the Democrats pushed this through while the Republicans opposed it. So you want to elect more Republicans and go back to the way it was. And here's the thing, I've talked to people about Trump and, he lost and they were all upset. And I was like, why are you upset? The guy was an idiot. They're like, well, my 401k sure was good under him. They don't understand. That whole process started after George W. Bush ruined the economy and left us in the Great Recession that Obama and Biden inherited. And it took them 1.5 years to get things on track to where they needed to be. And then that's when the economy started picking up. It didn't pick up under Trump. He just had the audacity to not screw it up very bad.
Yeah.
Although he tried Chinese tariffs and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Insanity. Speaking of people screwing up their lives and their careers, did have a little minor controversy out of the Biden press office this week.
Yeah.
You wanna take that one? You want me to talk about it?
Why don't you start and I'll weigh in.
Well, we had a assistant director of the press office. I'm trying to get the exact title right. Deputy press secretary. Let's get the name right here. TJ Ducklo. Yeah, TJ Ducklo, who basically ruined his career tonight. He or today, whenever it happened. Basically on the campaign, he got close with a reporter from Axios, and she and he started dating. Once the campaign was over, they got really more serious. They disclosed the relationship to both employers, and so Axios reassigned her to report only on Vice President Harris, which is still kind of a conflict of interest in my mind, because to me they should have put her on Congress or something else completely away from where the boyfriend worked. Yeah, something like that. But then when a reporter was going to break the story from Politico about the actual about the relationship and about it being disclosed, everything like that, she called him for a quote. Apparently he got very angry at her, said a bunch of sexist and misogynistic things on a voicemail, threatened her that he was going to ruin her and all these things, and had the brains or lack thereof to leave it on a voicemail.
Right.
He was originally suspended by the press office, and then once the voicemail came out, he submitted his resignation.
Right.
I believe over the weekend. So a little blip there. I mean, that's going to happen with people from time to time. But the bottom line is there's several lessons there. But number one is don't. You and I've talked about this many times because we both come from a journalism background, but don't mistreat people for doing their jobs.
Right.
Reporters have a job to do. They have a story to write. You may not like the topic of the story. You may not like the way they write the story, but it's their job. And they have freedom of the press, which, everybody wants to talk about Second Amendment rights or freedom of speech or freedom of worship, but they forget how valuable the freedom of the press is here in our country. And so don't berate somebody for doing their job. And then the other thing is, be careful about your relationships at work. That's really creates those conflicts of interest that I very rarely have seen good things come out of that.
Yeah, I think that there are two things that if you're going to run an administration that's going to be above board, I think you should require all of your subordinates to watch from beginning to end the show with Martin Sheen as the president, The West Wing, because that's going to show you how you need to deal with Congress, how you need to deal with members of the press, what you need to do to run an above board administration. If you think you're going to do some shady stuff, which this guy did, you need to watch House of Cards, because one thing you would learn is don't leave it on an answering machine.
Yeah.
And so
it's unfortunate because I think it'll probably end up taking down the girlfriend's career too.
Well, it certainly will hurt, right? And it probably will, who knows what kind of relationship they had, but I can tell you, unless you have a really strong relationship, this is hard to come back from, because basically the other party is going to feel guilty that they somehow cost their their lover this great opportunity to work in the White House. I mean, let's face it, those jobs they're not plentiful. They only come along every now and then, and you get a chance to work in the White House, you better be minding your P's and Q's and doing what you're supposed to do if you want to get that job after 4 years or 8 years or however long the administration lasts.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And what happens in the press game is these kinds of controversies will follow you the rest of your career.
Oh yeah, there's not a newspaper or blog in the country that's going to hire that guy.
Well, and you think, and not even that. I mean, I know a TV caster that had a pretty bad issue, and she tried to take a PIO officer position in Texas, small county PIO job, and the story came out.
Yeah.
And so she ended up losing the job. So it's unfortunate, but people need to be smarter about how they treat people.
Yeah. I mean, it really is a small world when it comes to pretty much any profession, but the journalism community is extremely small. I mean, what you do at a small town paper in East Texas, somebody at a medium-sized paper or a TV station in Yakima, Washington, they'll know about it. They'll find out about it.
Yeah, especially in today's internet society.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that takes us to, I believe, our final topic of the night, which has been a really good discussion. It's always good when G-Man and I can get crossways of each other a little bit.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks we just agree on everything, and we don't, and that's fine. And that's one of the things we wanted to foster with this podcast is it's okay to disagree.
Yeah.
But take us to our final topic tonight, which is what's happening in the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Yeah. So the senior senator from Kentucky just got reelected. That'd be Mitch McConnell. Now, Mitch McConnell is over 80. He's got some health issues that, depending on how close you follow this, you may or may not have known about. But, you get over 80 and your time on earth isn't what it once was, or at least what you think it once was. And so they're starting to think about what would happen if Mitch got tired of being in the Senate and suddenly retired, or, God basically suddenly retired him on another one.
Yeah, or a really strong likelihood would be that that they have their own rebellion and they remove him as minority leader.
Right.
And if he's not minority leader, does he have interest in even staying?
Yeah, absolutely. So
by the way, what's his hometown? Do you know?
I don't. Let me look that up real quick.
I've got it right here. It's Moscow, Kentucky.
Oh wow, Moscow, Kentucky. So Moscow Mitch really fits.
I'm just kidding. It's not his real hometown. I made that up. It was a joke because of Moscow Mitch. Anyone watching?
Right.
Yeah. So basically, the Republican-held legislature's a little nervous about that because they've got an older senator and they've got a popular Democratic governor.
Yeah, Andy Beshear they really like him in Kentucky. He's the first Democratic governor in a while. And the way the current law states is that the governor's party, so that would be the Democrats, if the seat came open, House or Senate, the governor's party has to put forth 3 names, and then the governor gets to choose one of those 3 names. Well, the Republican-held legislature is kind of ticked about that, and they think the possibility exists that they can end up with the Democratic senator to replace Mitch McConnell, appointed by Andy Beshear. Well, what they're trying to do now is force through a bill that says the person being replaced has to be replaced by a person of their party. And because they control the legislature, there's a good chance that's going to pass.
It's always interesting how we've talked about this before, but Republicans want to change the rules when they don't benefit them. And then when they get in the minority, they say, you better not change the rules.
Yeah.
You better not change the rules, because if we get in there, we're going to change the rules. And it's like, you already did.
Yeah.
Just like them complaining, you already mentioned with Merrick Garland, but just like them complaining about, where's the sense of unity and bipartisanship? And it's not right for you just to jam this COVID relief bill through. I'm sitting there going, kind of like Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah.
The way they jammed that nomination through on that. So it'll be interesting how that goes, because one of the names that they're scared of that the Democratic Party, I'm sure, would nominate for would be Mr. Beshear himself.
Right.
So.
Well, I always wonder why Ashley Judd, she talks a good game. She gives tons of money to the Kentucky Democratic Party. And, she comes up every now and then as a candidate. She doesn't appear to be doing much in Hollywood these days. She's still pretty attractive. She's very intelligent. I wonder why they don't run her sometime.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of how much they want to open themselves up and talk about their finances and things like that. But, I've said this for the last 4 years, which is any celebrity on the Democratic side considering running for president or Senate, they've got a pretty good blueprint to follow with Donald Trump. You don't have to release anything.
Well, nobody did until Nixon did. And the only reason Nixon did, I think, was because he thought it would help him get elected. It would show people that he wasn't a crook, which he was. And that, he led a pretty Spartan lifestyle, which he didn't. But, his taxes showed that he did. And I think he thought it would help him get elected, and it became precedent, and everybody's done it since, until now Donald Trump said, no, I'm not going to do that. And the reason Donald Trump didn't do that, I think, is because it shows that he's not the billionaire that he wants everybody to think he is. And I think it also might show that he's got a few more mob ties than he really wants to relate. I mean, you work in New York City for a long time, you got to have some of those. So,
well, and also just who he's leveraged to and how much he's leveraged to them. Being leveraged to the Russians and things like that he doesn't want people to know. But I mean, the guy said he was going to release his taxes. He never did. The guy said he was going to release a health care plan. It's going to be much better than Obamacare. Never did.
Yep.
Every other week was going to be infrastructure week. It never was.
Right.
And so, while I don't think it's necessarily a great strategy, I think if somebody like Ashley Judd wanted to run in Kentucky, I'd say go for it. You don't have to release anything you don't want to.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So.
All right. Well, that takes us to the end of today's episode. It's been another lively discussion. A lot of stuff happening right now. We will continue to monitor the future, if there's going to be a Patriot Party or if there's going to be a Republican Party or whatever happens on that side of things, and also with the COVID relief bill. Speaking of that, make sure get your vaccine whenever you get scheduled to do so. Check your your local health departments to find out when the scheduling and the stages are for that. Please wear a mask when you're out. I was told by a woman at the store this weekend who was not wearing a mask, and I requested that I asked her why she wasn't wearing a mask, and she informed me that she was immune, and I let her know that that's a pretty big fallacy, that you can catch COVID a second time. There's been cases of that. And even if you are immune and vaccinated, you can still be a carrier and putting other people at risk.
Well, my mother-in-law had the shot, and they told her, keep wearing your mask because you could be a carrier and give it to everybody just because you can't get it. So
that's exactly right.
One thing I'd like to throw in, a lot of the country is in the middle of a deep freeze right now. This background is Loveland, Colorado. Now, this is a stock photo, but this is pretty much what our sunset looked like today. Tomorrow, we're going to be in the 40s. So, you know, over the weekend, we were minus 13 was our wind chill factor. So hang in there. It's going to get better. You know, you're going to have sunsets like this coming up in the next week or so.
Yeah, I'm actually in part of that. We had our temperature this morning was -8 degrees temperature, -29 wind chill.
Right.
And we've got about 6 inches of snow on the ground, and supposed to get snow again tomorrow night.
Right.
They are doing some rolling blackouts as well to try to relieve pressure on the energy grid, and so it's a tough time right now. It was bad enough with the coronavirus, and now we've got this. So everybody, as G-Man said, everybody just hang in there.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.
Good night.